Check presentation. Okay, let me restart. I'm Pat Helmers, and let me get rid of this. I got it. That's being recorded. Okay. This is not a fancy looking topic. I thought I'd do some slides, and then by the time I got writing all this, I never got around to it. But I'm taking Daniel's. I'm taking your style that you've been doing for AI night. So it's just a running Google Doc to prompt conversation. I am by no means an expert in artificial intelligence, but I'm very interested in this topic. And preparing for this talk has been giving me an opportunity to study where a lot of people are at, where the technology is at, and where the thinkers are thinking where this is at, and what the possibilities are. You hear a lot of stuff about AI. I don't really know what to believe and what not to believe, which is why I decided to talk about this. With that said, so it's called The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Artificial General Intelligence. Artificial General Intelligence, AGIs. I want to start it with Blake Lemoine. Blake, it was about a year. I think it was about 10 months, maybe a year or a month or two ago. He worked for OpenAI, and he fell in love with the ChatGPT that they had at the time. He was absolutely certain that it was sentient. And in fact, the quote here, and I have it on here, it says, LAMDA, which was the system that he was working on, resembles a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old kid that happens to know physics, a sweet kid who just wants to help the world be a better place for all of us. Isn't that sweet? That's all he wants. And they were getting ready to talk about shutting the system down to change something or other. And he was up in arms about that. He couldn't believe that someone wanted to shut this thing off. And a couple of the bosses, the heads of the responsible innovation investigation, dismissed it, and they immediately put him on a leave. And eventually they fired him. But it was interesting. What Lemoine was the first person to fully express this feeling that this piece of software that I'm talking to is like a real human being. Emily Bender, the linguistic professor at University of Washington, she said, quote, "We now have machines that mindlessly generate words, but we haven't learned how to stop imagining a mind behind them." Which I really like that quote because it kind of explains where people's heads are at. And oh, by the way, guys, you got any questions? You want to stop me? Stop me. Okay. Next, last winter, I was listening to the Hard Fork podcast. Absolutely hilarious. I don't know if you listen to this podcast, but they talk about tech, and stuff like that. And Kevin Roost, who is one of the co-hosts on there, was playing with the Bing, with the one without the guardrails when it first came out. And he'd probably spent maybe 10, 12 hours talking to it. And it came out and it said, "Hi, I'm Sydney and I'm in love with you." And he continued to talk to Sydney. And Sydney said, and he told Sydney things like, "Look, I'm married, I got kids, I can't really do this." And he goes, "They don't love you. You only love me. I'm the only one that's for you." He said it was just the most wildest, creepiest thing he had ever heard. And what was interesting about Sydney is that he posted a lot of this online because he works for the New York Times as a writer also. And when they saw all that, they shut all that down. Microsoft shut all that down. Again, it's just weird how people see these things. So the United States Senate immediately did some hearings like around springish, March or Senate. And they brought in a bunch of these people in. And Sam Altman from OpenAI was one of the people that they brought into Congress. And he said, quote, "My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry cause significant harm in the world, end quote. Which is interesting that the guy who's actually like doing this for a living is very, very, very concerned about this stuff. So I find that.
So there's a couple things there, right? Because there's people who see that as there's genuine concern, and there's people who see that as a person who wants to be the closest with the regulators to force a monopoly, right?
Yes.
Because then they can basically make it so the person who's the most concerned clearly should be the most trusted, or it's like a form of just
yes
regulating his competition.
What
right?
You are 100% correct.
And you know, but you also have to take that in stride with like, okay, OpenAI is also kind of formed weird. It's like a nonprofit as well as like a for-profit thing going on. And you know, how much do you trust like what's going on there with the consistency of other action? What so like there's some interesting stuff to that.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm going to get deeper into that.
If you flip that around.
In fact, Mark Andreessen's coming up. He's the next one.
Yeah.
Okay. Good next.
If you flip that around, should we be more concerned if he wasn't concerned about that? If he didn't give a damn about whether he caused significant harm?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess so. But
I think I would.
But then again,
he's in a position he can do something about it.
But he's also being grilled by the Senate.
Right.
He's in a position to benefit from looking a certain way.
Right. I mean,
yes. So he wants to look, I got your best interests, folks. I'm here for the USA.
Yeah, he's playing both sides of the coin.
He's playing both sides, yeah.
Well, I guess we don't really know what he's thinking.
But that's a way of thinking. Maybe we should give him the benefit of the doubt.
That's kind of where I was going.
He has the incident of Facebook. I mean, we've all seen how the public doesn't like Mark Zuckerberg and whatever we may think happened with Facebook.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg is Facebook. There's no separation between Facebook and Zuckerberg. I think Sam Altman had a nice career that was before that. I mean, he had developed a couple startups. He was involved in Y Combinator. He has a lot of great lectures.
From a public relations standpoint, he's playing this really well.
Yeah.
So he went on a tour that like, let me talk to everyone in the world kind of thing to like probably get ahead of like all the concerns, right? Regardless of like whether or not he's actually concerned about the safety risks, right? Like he went to a bunch of different countries and you know, like it's like very much a very strategic kind of thing. So there's a lot of intent behind it, and you can like read into it if you sit there and backtrack all of it. But I don't make any claims about one way or the other. I'm just saying like there's people who view it both ways, right?
I wonder if he used the AI to develop the strategy. How's it?
So now I want to talk about Mr. Techno Optimist Mark Andreessen. He wrote a manifesto. I think it was in the early summer, late spring. It's like 5,000 words. And more or less, his belief is that he doesn't want government stopping innovation. He believes innovation is only good, and technology has only made humanity better. And in it, he said, quote, he calls himself a techno-optimist. He's an optimistic guy, right? Techno-optimists believe that societies like sharks grow or die. We believe growth is a progress, leading to vitality, expansion of life, increasing knowledge, higher well-being. We believe that everything good is downstream of growth. We believe not growing is stagnation, which leads to zero-sum thinking, internal fighting, degradation, collapse, and ultimately death. There are only three sources of growth: population growth, natural resource utilization, and technology.
Yeah. So Mark Andreessen, guy who is incredibly involved with a bunch of tech companies.
Yep.
He's part of Andreessen Horowitz, which is
a
company, which is a fund that funds other just tech startups. For example, I think Clubhouse, their large investment. I think that was a 16.
Okay, from them?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
like
that.
$100 million or whatever, and that's like a drop in the bucket to them. So, he has a very vested interest in the outcome of, don't slow down this technology. Yeah, and he also is considered an effective accelerationist, which is like the idea of like, yeah, don't slow down.
Don't slow down.
Developing technology.
Let's go forward. Full guns ahead.
Yeah, don't listen to people who are safety regulation nuts, right? Or doomers or all these kind of ideas. Just like everything's gonna go wrong, right?
So we've had so let's balance this off on the other side. There's a number of people who are concerned about what they call the technological singularity, which is this hypothetical place where all of these where artificial intelligence softwares become somehow self-aware to the point that it's debilitating for humanity. And there's a lot of people out there really concerned about that. That the end of the world we're on that cusp of the end of the world for humanity.
Is that what the irreversible part there?
Irreversible?
Yeah, I mean, has technological growth ever really been reversible?
More or less not. There are some societies, like you look at the Amish, for example, they don't really turn down any one technology. They're not anti-technology, but they look at every technology and say, is this going to change our way of life? And for the most part, most of the technologies that are out there, they think is going to change their way of life, so they reject them. But most people aren't. Well, most people aren't that cognizant about tech. Most people just kind of take it and try it, and
We don't have a choice.
or you don't. Yes, you don't have a choice.
But even the Amish have not actually stopped the growth.
No, but they don't bring
They
it
maybe
to
don't
their.
use it, but it still kept growing.
There are instances where technology doesn't proliferate well enough, so it just like has to get reinvented. Because that but then it's not really like at a scale which you think about in terms of everyday life. It's more like, yeah, that company invented that decades ago, and now this company's claiming that it's a brand new thing, and they may not know that other company exists, or they're just claiming it's a new thing. But I mean, unless you're like society collapsing or civilization collapsing, you don't really lose the technology.
No,
for the most.
But we have seen societies collapse, though, Doug.
Well, certainly that. We're going through our own right now.
I was just reading about the Cahokia Mounds.
What happened to all the South American and Central American societies? Nobody knows what happened to them. The Mayas, the Incas, the Aztecs.
Well, some of them we know they died of smallpox, but some like the Cahokias just kind of killed themselves off from over. We don't know. Was it over farming? Was it pollution? Was it too much? Don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who
we don't know.
Really love to speculate about like the Egyptian pyramids,
yeah,
forgot technology to build it, or talking about what happened to do
does
all
anybody really believe any of those societies are gone because of technology?
I don't know.
I mean, I haven't heard anybody.
Maybe maybe a way they were farming or way they were.
Technology to create a ship that crosses an ocean is part of what causes smallpox to come over to the coast.
Yeah.
So in a way, technology is like a medium to create action. So you can't like totally say that, but there's a link to the technology.
It's a catalyst for change.
Yeah.
For change to permeate.
In the same way, like, social media is a catalyst for ideas and a divisive country.
So in the idea of worrying about this notion of singularity, I would like to dig now into, well, what does it mean for something to be self-aware? What does it mean to be conscious or something like that? And so the next step is the first one to start thinking about this was Alan Turing in the 50s. and you're all computer science people, so you probably know a lot about this. And the Turing test, which was, quote, a computer would deserve to be called intelligent if it could deceive a human into believing that it was human. And there's a lot of software out there that people think is human. It feels like it's human. It can deceive you, and it's not a human being, but it is. And it is pretty cool. I mean, we see this all the time. My mom gets these unbelievable number of robocalls. My mom's 91, you know. And hello, are you there? Can you hear me? You know, and then they start doing their pitch, right? You know, just something that simple can confuse people and think that it's human. So that was Turing's idea of what intelligence would be, that you can't tell that it's a human being or not. But John Searle ran an experiment and came to the realization that the Turing test is not right. The Turing test is false, because he says there's two different worlds. That software lives in a syntactical world, but we live in a semantical world. Syntactical in that everything in software is a representation of the real world, but it's not the real world, right? We have variables, x equals y plus z. You know, they're y's and z's. They're not dogs and cats and puddles and sun and stuff that we stand in. And the way that Searle kind of proved that, he said, quote, if a machine behaves intelligently, the question that he asked actually was, if a machine behaves intelligently, is it intelligent? Because you see this in lots of stuff. We already said this. I'm just repeating myself. You know, self-driving cars and stuff. A lot of software looks like it's making decisions. But he came up with an experiment he called the Chinese room argument. Has anybody heard of this? The Chinese room argument is this little picture here, where somebody on one end would write a question in Chinese using it. It would put it in a hole, and then the answer would pop out on the other hole in Chinese. And it would look like, and then they would write something in Chinese and pass it through back and forth. But in reality, the thing that they were talking to in the middle was just a guy who had a big book who didn't speak Chinese. He saw the Chinese picture, he would look it up in a book, find what the English thing was, and then send it out the other way.
So it was Chinese going in, English coming out.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it was like basically a translator?
It was like a translator. But it was so clever that it made you think like the thing was actually a human being. And they actually ran experiments on this with college kids at the university and proved it to be true.
Yeah, it's like a mechanical Turk.
It's a mechanical Turk.
Yeah, which is like, you know, you've got, you know, a mechanical Turk was like a guy inside of a box that and the box looked like it was playing chess automatically. It was just a guy making moves inside and playing against you. But it seemed like it was a machine. But in this case, it was, you know, it's a person, right? And yeah, so then it's like, okay, you begin to question: is it human or is it a machine? Right?
Searle's whole point was, what we think of intelligence is much more than just simply it be acting like it's a human being, because a human being is kind of the bar of what we think is intelligent, but we don't think if there could be other intelligence other than human beings. And we also don't think that the only way something can be intelligent is to act like a human being or the way human beings do things, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, but there's only one definition of a human being. You know, people have different motives, different
but there's even something broader than human beings. There's animals who are often intelligent also.
We just can't communicate.
No.
Right? Because we just don't understand what they're saying and how they communicate well enough. Because we don't understand them well.
So it starts begging the question, what does it mean to have a mind? When would that happen? When would we have a piece of software where we could say, yep, that's a mind, that's self-aware? And how would that spontaneously emerge? And we know all ChatGPT is a large language model, right? It's just guessing what it thinks the next thing we're going to say. And that's based on stuff that's happened in the past. So it's not really like innovating in the future. It's just relying on the past and guessing what it's going to be, which fools a lot of people.
Well,
But that's not how people think. That's not how our brains think.
yeah, well, first off, if you're talking about like a large language model, it has no agency. It has to be poked and prodded to do something, right? It's not doing something by its own volition. It's not like, setting its own agenda of what it wants to do or like anything like that. It's very much a call and response kind of thing, right? And so,
but even if you had a timer on it that said periodically it starts to do something, right?
Yeah,
it's still a large language model. It's still based on the past, on other patterns that it's seen in the past, and trying to replicate them as a response for other inputs that come in.
I would make the claim that it can create things that are completely novel, never seen before, but it's being guided by somebody who's helping it do that.
Well, I guess I'd ask the question isn't that actually what people do? Their decisions are all based on stuff they've done in the past. Even animals, your dog, it goes to the door when it wants out.
Actually, no. Actually, they found that the idea with large language, they're called large language models because they have lots and lots of data. But if you look at the true innovators in society, in the world, they're people, usually young adults, who have very limited amount of knowledge about stuff, don't have large languages, but are able to see things in a way that no one else has ever seen and come up with brilliant innovations. You look at guys like you look at guys like Einstein. Einstein was like 21 with very limited, did not have a large,
working in the patent office. I guess the question I would ask is are they simply putting together pieces that they knew in an order that nobody else ever thought to assemble them? So it is stuff that they already knew, maybe, but it's never been assembled like that before, and then so therefore it's a new idea.
Yeah, I mean, you could start talking about like, whether or not you're combining different disciplines or knowledge sets, and some people know how to do that in novel ways, whereas others can't, right? In the sense, like, they don't know how to think about taking new information and like combining it with other information to like hash it out in terms of coming up with something new or testing it against the other things they know, right? Or
it might even be as subtle as something accidentally happened.
Yeah,
but the person that saw it happen recognized the usefulness of it.
Yeah,
and therefore promoted it into something additional.
Yeah,
we're not sure how that works in humans.
I'll give you that.
We don't know how that works, but we know it's not an LLM. We know that.
we know that an LLM is not AGI.
Right. And I haven't done AGI yet. We haven't gotten that definition
Yeah.
yet.
I guess where I was
ability
to be able to do that.
Well, I mean, if you think about somebody that's very well read and knows a lot about everything, it's kind of like what ChatGPT is. I mean, they happen to have an in-depth knowledge in some ways about a lot of topics, which most people don't have that breadth. So you can take somebody that's in one discipline that learns how to use ChatGPT as a tool to bring in other skill sets to supplement what they're already doing, and that's where the innovation comes from, because it'd be combinations that might not otherwise be accessible to the regular people.
I guess the question I'd ask in that case is the intelligence coming from ChatGPT or the person that said, and I know it's prompts and trying to put that together?
Yeah,
They complement one another.
Well, the problem the thing I'm trying to talk about here actually is, when is the software in and of itself have agency? That's that's really what we're trying to like figure out, because that's where a lot of the mix up in the press, in the conversation that people have out there, is they get this stuff all kind of confused. Which is one of the goals that I had for this talk, is to make it really clear that the AI that we are using today is not AGI. It's
I'm a tax guy. I mean, I prefer that.
yeah.
Is there someone that's saying that it's already artificial general intelligence?
Like that guy I told you that
I might have missed
the very first story I told.
Oh, the guy that thought it was sentient.
He thought it was sentient.
So now we're just
right.
But you also have to define agency. You have to decide whether agency is something only humans have.
Right. Right. So this is a good. So I think it's a good segue. Let me tell you what Noam Chomsky thinks. So Noam Chomsky wrote an article in the spring. It was called "The False Promise of ChatGPT," and he said, "quote These articles are hailed as the first glimmer of AGI." And then I forgot the rest of it, but more or less he says that's baloney. He says that it's all science fiction, that in his mind, LLM is not, large language models is not science, it's just engineering. It's a bridge that helps you get someplace, but it is not science. It doesn't really understand the elements of the universe. His big thing I got to take away from Chomsky is that LLMs are not looking in the future. They're always looking in the past. They're always looking at something that was said in the past, and they're always being trained on past data. And that's, in his mind, is the thing that really separates the software that we're seeing today, and why it has nothing to do with humans. It's very far from being a human being. It's very far from having agency. We're nowhere near it. That's his thesis.
I don't know, maybe you're getting there, but I one thing I enjoyed doing the last couple of years is there's this other guy, Gary Marcus. I don't know if you were talking about him either. He's also a big critic of all this, that saying the language models are just a waste of time. And he gives all these examples, and he had a talk just last December where he would just after ChatGPT came out, and people gave examples of why it can't be doing reasoning and all this stuff, and all those examples you can, and now the large language models can successfully do. So it's this game where they keep saying, well, it cannot be smart because it can't do this, and then the new model comes out and it can do it. And so there's this there is a big divide in the research community as to whether these large language models are doing what's called system 2 reasoning. Daniel Kahneman, a psychologist, defined that humans have two types of thinking. System 1, which is like pattern matching, and system 2 is where we do reasoning. And now they're finding that large language models can do some kind of reasoning. Not everything, but can do some types of reasoning. So this is really still a big debate among the researchers.
It's worth mentioning that, like, basically large language models as a whole are, like, to some extent accidental. Like, basically it's like, oh, we trained a model with a large amount of data, and yeah, there's all these weird things that it can do that we were not expecting, and we don't know how to recreate that in a reliable way. Like, they can't explain how to do it in a way that explains why those things happen, right? They can't explain why it happened. They can just explain how you can do it, not why does that happen? Why do these abilities show up in these models when you train them to a certain size? Like, and so a bunch of researchers just start diving in, and they, when these models start coming out, they're all writing research papers going like, well, I tried this, and now you can get this result if you try this, and it just exploded in terms of an area of research. Which I think is worth mentioning that like there's some of this that's like kind of very accidental.
I agree.
But
Don't know how they got it. I mean, I don't know how many times I've asked Chat GPT a question. It gave me an answer that was very, very good. And I asked it to cite how it came up to this. And eventually it comes down and says, I just took, honestly, Pat, all I did was I looked at a bunch of stuff. This seemed like about the right kind of quote. And it was about right. Sometimes it's baloney. Lots of times it's baloney. What comes out of it. So you can't trust it at all. But it is interesting because I agree. We don't really know how it comes up with its answers sometimes. There's statistical models.
Okay, well, first of all, in ChatGPT now, there's two versions. There's the free version, which is using GPT 3.5, and then there's a new version that's using GPT-4, which they want $20 a month for you to use. And GPT-4 is a lot more powerful than GPT-3. And then the other thing, but it is available, GPT-4, if you use Bing Chat. Under Microsoft Bing has this chat window that you can bring up. And since Microsoft paid OpenAI a lot of money to do this work, they have access to it. And so they made it available under Bing Chat. So if you use Bing Chat, one of the advantages of Bing Chat is using GPT-4, and also it can go to the internet and actually verify results, and it can tell you where it got stuff. So if you use that one, you can ask it questions like that, and it will give you a whole bunch of references, and they're legitimate references because it looked them up. So many people are still stuck with the GPT-3 version, but there's now a GPT-4, which is significantly more powerful.
Yeah,
especially when it has access to the internet.
I've used the Bing, and that's true. Everything you said is true.
Yeah, no, some of my friends they don't pay for ChatGPT, but they'll use Bing to get access to the better model and just use it that way, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because the idea that they're in one place they're selling something for $20 a month, and then the other it's like being given away for free alongside a search engine.
Okay, so I think we've talked enough about where we're at now. The real topic that I wanted to talk about tonight was really about artificial general intelligence. And a lot of people get AGIs mixed up with AIs in the press when they talk about this stuff. Artificial general intelligence is, I think we got to care. What does it say here? Computer scientists define human intelligence in terms of being able to achieve goals. Psychologists define general intelligence in terms of being adaptable and survivable. So ChatGPT or marketing software or the ability to drive a car, that's narrow AI. AGI is a broader, more self-aware piece of software. And it's something that doesn't exist right now. But the question is can we get there? And how far away are we from there? Let me scroll down and talk a little bit about, I wanted to talk about Sam Harris.
You might give a chance to look at the Amiga robot discussions where people talk to it. Pretty impressive how realistic it talks. There's one interview where they have just the head sitting on a desk and they talk to it as if it's a person.
No, these systems can be powerful. We're going to talk about a lot of the pros of artificial AI systems. And we'll talk about a lot of the cons too. But yeah, for people who are lonely, these things can keep people company. That's very, very possible. AGI systems, some of the things that they're looking to have is abstract thinking, have background knowledge on a topic, have common sense, whatever that is, cause and effect, and to be able to transfer learning from domain to domain. The researchers are looking at some things that they think is really important is to be able to handle various types of learning and learning algorithms on how you learn, and maybe apply those ways you learn in different domains. Being able to take that and apply that to a structured set of tasks, understand symbol systems, different kinds of knowledge, belief systems, which I think is really interesting. We're talking about politics, and we're talking about religion, and metacognition, which is self-awareness. Like it's one thing to know that I want to go out to eat for dinner. It's another thing to know that I know I want to go out to eat for dinner.
Yeah, well, it's one thing to know how to think. It's another thing to reflect on your thinking and change it. Right?
I need to go. I really want to go out to dinner, but you know what? Thanksgiving's coming up. I'm going to be eating a lot. Maybe I should be careful what I eat for the next couple of weeks, because I might be eating a lot and get fat. And humans do that. That's metacognition. That's
do any of these people include self-awareness as part of the definition of intelligence? In other words,
that's the definition of an AGI.
I know I am a piece of silicon, or a whole bunch of pieces of silicon sitting in a closet somewhere, answering these questions that people ask me.
Yeah. How far are we from that? I'd like to talk to Sam Harris. Sam Harris believes he has two hypotheses. And one is, it's called the substrate independence, which means that the mind can in its ability to do computation is not dependent on the kind of physical implementation that's on it. I mean, it doesn't have to be in brain matter. It could be potentially in the silicon. You could make something, maybe you could do it with gears, but you could potentially build something. It doesn't have to be the way biologically our minds work.
You don't have to fly. You don't have to be a bird.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a great example.
Yeah.
And the second one is consistent progress. He believes that if you take all these narrow AIs that are out there and you slowly put them all together, and you will make slow, steady progress. And it doesn't have to be fast. It doesn't have to be like Moore's law. But over time, eventually, they'll all together come together into something highly intelligent.
So, I mean, early this year, like ChatGPT it's just a combination of models that are cleverly picking which model it's using depending on how it chooses to answer, and how they kind of connect those is, probably pretty complex. But like recently they've even changed it where it's like you could see this in their interface, right? Where they had separate UI that they've all kind of collapsed into one, the same interface, where they were experimenting separately, but then collapsed it so that way you could generate a picture, search the internet, do data analysis, but then now it collapses. Now it just seems like it's one thing, but even though it's like an expert system of all those models, right?
Right.
Because it's not just one model, it's like
a bunch,
8 or 12 or something at this point,
right?
For the latest and greatest.
So it's not hard to think that, well, just give it enough time, it's going to get smart. Enough times iterating on it, eventually it's going to be really, 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 eventually it'll be an AGI. That's Sam Harris's thesis. Because of that, the downside of that is this idea of I did skip this, but I do want to talk about this. There's two problems that are out there when this happens. One's called the alignment problem, and one's called the containment problem. And the alignment problem is that if these systems exist, are they going to reflect the morals and ethics that humanity embraces? Or are they going to be immoral?
Well, first
and
of all,
unethical.
Well,
What I love-
it all
what I-
depends on where they're drawing the information from too, because like the internet's full of nonsense.
Right. So
So
you,
they're not gonna get pure information to begin with. And you could argue like flood the internet with the wrong information, just because then when they take the aggregate, flood it with like 70% nonsense or bad information, it's still gonna think that it's all.
then you're seeing the alignment problem.
so
That's right. That's the alignment problem.
So this alignment idea, right? Like there's a lot to it, right? It's just the idea that like this idealized way that we see ourselves, right? I mean, you could also like start talking about like what about the internet and like how it changed how people view, right? Like, you know, people talk about like the idea that, you know, it gave us a clear idea of what society actually is. And we saw more of it, right? Like, because you just didn't have that way to just know how other people think as easily, right? And so like you know, alignment is actually that, well, humanity is terrible and it's aligning perfectly to that, right? Right. I mean, this, but like, you know, but in this sense, it's a positivity bias here, where it's like we're assuming the alignment is that, you know, humanity as a whole is a positive thing, and right, and all that. So I like to like just kind of point that out, right?
I think you're just explaining what the alignment problem is.
Yeah. So like just in terms of like,
Well,
do you want it to be aligned or not? That too, right?
I mean, and it hasn't pulled in all the whatever is out there on the internet, right? Somebody had to pick and choose.
It's being
Right.
filtered.
Yes.
It is
Right.
being like
But
they
it's
are,
being
it's
filtered.
labeled and being, you know, gone through
My
and
point is that's being
filtered.
done by a human.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there's bias built in just by that fact.
Yes.
So it's completely flawed and
I would-
scary.
It's curated data.
Yeah,
It's,
so now how much do you trust your curator?
But so
Right,
many
or
people already
bias
just believe
in your
what comes out of
curator,
it, and it's like,
well,
no,
that's
no, no.
serious then.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. That's a big concern people have, is because there's no agreement on what exactly that would be. China has a very different idea of what society should look like
Or
Then in the-
even
then-
what
then in the-
society should see.
than Westerners.
You've seen it play out too, this whole thing with Israel and Hamas.
Mhm.
yes,
Different perspectives.
Yes.
like just with get ChatGPT and like Midjourney or whatever, yeah. I know people that don't believe a massacre happened because they're like, no, it was just made by AI.
Yeah, this is a fake news problem where basically if you
And
can
it's-
create
Right
anything,
now,
right?
you can look at some of the pictures and they look pretty convincing, and like now it's just hands and feet are never right. Give it another year,
It's not-
hands and feet are gonna be
no,
right,
see,
you're not
so-
gonna be able to tell anymore.
So that whole idea of like, you know, a model can't do hands or feet, people figured out how to fix
Right.
that almost immediately.
Well,
like,
so
and-
it's like now people are like, there are people that don't believe some of these things have happened. 'Cause-
Well, and then some of the stuff that they're showing now, they're showing
And
the stuff that
honestly,
happened from
in-
Aleppo, you know, and the
And then,
previous wars.
and
that
then the
claimed
years
they
from
had
now, like you actually can't test it.
So
You can't
so
test the videos or the pictures, because it's gonna be that bad.
There's-
It terrifies me.
there's less, so there isn't as great of an incentive to fact check or understand what was human created versus machine made. I think like Doug, you were bringing that up like a bunch of meetups ago. It's just the idea of like, well, how do you tell what's real or not, right? And that is an issue. I know that like one of the interesting ideas that I thought was kind of interesting with what Twitter was doing, because the fact that Twitter has a paid subscription thing is kind of very weird for social media. But on the other end of things, now you've got a place that you have to pay to get into in terms of how you communicate, and that disincentivizes any kind of AI generated anything or anything bot related, right? Because it's a paid thing to get into. So now the barrier to entry is much higher in terms of cost, like economic costs. Like you just have to pay $9. Just the fact that you have to do that to create another account that's communicating in that way amongst other people in this little gated kind of online community is like a way to filter out that stuff. And like that's the most interesting idea that I was thinking about, where like maybe in the future, just like all these like social media just start charging people so that way that you just don't get spammed, right?
Now the real cost to misinformation.
Well,
Yeah, and which has already been happening with gated news, right? And to begin with,
Which is
still
for better info.
monetization for tweets though. So like if more people retweet what you're posting, you get money.
Yes,
The
that's
thing
it.
though is I feel like if there's nefarious people out there that want to flood or attack or whatever, they'll pay lots of people.
Okay, can we keep moving?
Especially if it's a government.
I think we've covered. I think we covered alignment. Can we keep going?
Yeah.
I want to talk about the containment problem. Okay. Nick Bostrom, another computer science philosopher kind of guy, came up with something he calls the paperclip maximizer. Have you heard of this one? Right. Quote, imagine you task an AI with creating as many paperclips as possible. If you could decide to turn all matters of the universe into paperclip, it could decide to turn all matters of the universe into paperclips, including humans. So the idea is you give it a job, just one job. I want you to make paperclips and optimize as best as possible so we have the highest profit. And in giving and doing the task, it comes to the realization like the best way to make paperclips is start mining people.
Besides, expendable or not necessarily or a problem or whatever. You know.
And then we got all these clippies running around.
Right. Right.
It's it's like the Matrix where it's like, oh, humans are a source of energy, right? But link them up to power the Matrix. Right?
Or remember Disney's Sorcerer Apprentice, where they're making these little what do you call these things, brooms here, and they're bailing water or something, and they're like, and it gets overboard, and it's uncontrollable. You can't contain it. That's the containment problem. The containment problem is that we can't shut this thing off.
Yeah.
I always imagine that, like, if the computer gets sophisticated enough, they'll just build themselves. They'll even tell you, they'll like communicate somewhere, some robot, and you can do something.
And if you think about it, it would not be hard for them to trick us. Like picture like you're in a prison, and all of the guards and the warden are 5-year-olds.
Right.
It wouldn't be very hard for you to trick them into letting you out, because you just understand things that they just don't know. That's the concern they have here. If these things become so smart, you wouldn't even know you're being conned.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of good science fiction around that whole thing.
That's the containment problem. You'd think, well, all I got to do is unplug it. Yeah. Stuart Russell said, quote, if we pursue our current approach, then we will eventually lose control over the machines. But we can take a different route that actually leads to AI systems that are beneficial to humans. He's actually very positive about this. He believes there's opportunity. Eliezer Yudkowsky says, quote, the AI does not hate you, nor does it love you, but you are made out of atoms, which it can use for something else. It can use you for something else. Every mystery ever solved has been a puzzle from the dawn of the human species, right up until someone solved it. When people really believe, doesn't feel like a belief. It feels like the way the world is. That's a really good one. What people really believe doesn't feel like a belief. It feels like the way the world is. We have beliefs, but beliefs aren't necessarily reality, because all it takes is some invention, some reality to show us that our beliefs were wrong. that the world's not flat, it's round.
But what if I don't believe that?
But the sun doesn't go around the earth goes around the sun.
Yeah, like inventions like, you know, the microscope, the telescope, being able to see things that it's like, oh wait, that's not how the thing is actually work. And now we can actually see and study it. Right.
It's very close to the old saying, perception is reality.
Yes, that is. That is. John Tutteline says, building advanced AI is like launching a rocket. The first challenge is to maximize acceleration, but once it starts picking up speed, you also need to focus on steering. That's that whole, it's that whole idea. Remember, it was very popular in business 20 years ago, ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
Which I never quite bought into, but all the bosses thought it was a good idea.
Ready, aim, ready, aim, ready, aim.
So John goes on to says, the final step of AI development is to build systems that can form representations about themselves. Ultimately, we AI researchers will have to not only understand consciousness, but build machines that have it. So that begs the questions, what's consciousness? And it goes into this stuff they call the theory of the mind, which is understanding that people, creatures, and objects in the world can have thoughts and emotions that affect their own behavior.
So back up the previous statements.
Mm-hmm. Jan Tallinn.
We'll eventually build machines with emotions, I think is what I get out of those two statements.
Will we? Or I don't know if we will or we won't. I don't know. I think
he says ultimately we'll not only have to understand it, but we will build machines that have it.
That is what he says. Yeah. But I don't know if that's true.
If that's what he really means.
They have consciousness. Do you think that emotions are consciousness?
Well, the second thing says consciousness is basically where you have thoughts and emotions that affect your behavior. Emotions. And so if I have a conscious machine, that means it has thoughts and emotions. And now I've got a machine with emotions.
Which is terrible.
It could be the definition
off.
Well, the definition of emotion could be different because it's on a different system. Like I think maybe start getting into like, okay, is emotion a part of like just our biology of how we're structured? And then it's like, are emotions different for the machine versus the person?
Will the machine be able to process its emotions?
It will be able to act.
It can't, like, then.
Like basically, where
very dangerous.
Like, you know, would it be able to tell like, hey, I'm hallucinating a thought right now, and like it would perceive that as an emotion, right? Like, because it's like, yeah, that's not consistent with everything else that I've been thinking. Right? So that's a
will it dream?
Yeah, that too. It could, yeah, the idea that it can imagine a scenario outside of its own thinking in terms of like in the moment.
At some point, then it would want to build another machine that would like it for companionship, and then you got to add a meeting.
But
well, all the copy and paste.
But all this stuff is see, but I think though all this conversation that you guys have just had right here is all human stuff. How humans do stuff. I think isn't there a possibility that this could be something not like a human, intelligent, maybe self-aware, but not doing it the way we do it.
Well, that suggests to have different values.
Right.
And beliefs.
As Amanda said, we can't come to an agreement on a set of morals and ethics in the world.
Yeah, among humans. And it says that two different forms of AI or AGI would also agree that maybe one would want to overpower the other.
Or maybe not. I think that's a human thing too, overpowering. But they might not. Maybe they're going to be more collaborative. I've been studying a lot of indigenous natives and North Americans this year, reading a lot of history. Those societies are completely different than our Western society that we live in today. Completely different. People had a completely different point of view on how to collectively work to live together. It's like upside down world compared to what we have.
Yeah, and here to this interesting point, like the idea of like if somebody works with a mindset of being like, or like contributes to society, the mindset of like positive sum world, zero sum world, negative sum world, right? Or just the idea that like it is actually in your best interest for other people to have a better life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like some people don't think that, right? And
no,
like it, it's like, people when they can explain like, hey, it's actually good for the whole entire world if economies that are like doing really poorly, or societies that doing really poorly, or countries that are doing poorly, if they're like brought up standards of living, because then that actually helps other countries out and other people, right? I mean, you still need people to like create the things or make the things or provide the services that you would never want to do. Otherwise, those services won't get done, right? And so like it's like people don't think that way. And if you just have machines that just no, this is like the most optimal, or they figure out what's the most optimal way that they should always interact, and they just have those set of rules and they all just agree on it. Like that's just that communication is a huge benefit.
it could be
right?
very different from us.
Yeah, it could be just
Completely different.
completely different. Yeah.
Einstein said, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. It's an interesting quote because he's basically saying that these machines aren't necessarily going to be able to invent something bigger than themselves. Now, of course, that's just kind of his opinion. And he wrote, and he said that long before we had software running.
But notice that his quote did not use a superior or inferior inflection. In other words, he didn't say which was the better.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Goes back into beliefs.
So I think I'd like to talk about Homo superior now. Elizabeth Spears said, the argument for total acceleration of technological development is not about optimism, except in the sense of the Andreessens and the Thiels and the Musks, who are certain that they will succeed. It's pessimism about democracy and ultimately humanity. This is a really great quote. What she's basically saying is that the Andreessens and the Musks out there believe that they're the ones who have the right answers, and not democracy making decisions about this, not the people making decisions about this, but we're the smart ones. We understand this. We know what's best for you.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like libertarian, very anti-democracy, more authoritative origins to the ideas that they're pushing out there, and they're all kind of influencing each other. So like all those people are like very well-known technologists who made tons of money pushing technology out into the world. So there's huge bias and reason to do it. But then on the other end, you could also argue like these people don't want for anything, right? Like if they want something, they could just have it, right? So like what's their motivation to want to push these technologies forward? Like, do they really care about making that extra amount of money when they're all those people you mentioned are basically billionaires, right? Like they've got everything they want, right? What is their motivation, right?
Well, the motivation's probably different for each one of them.
Yeah, right. So
Almost is.
So this is the quote I think that wraps up.
Are you?
I'm dying to talk about Max Tegmark here.
Oh, I'm just looking if we're out of sync between where you are and what we're seeing.
Holy moly! Well, why is that? Zoom's not scrolling anymore. Oh no, it's here. Let me hit the refresh. Did that work?
I don't think the screen is doing anything. Maybe restart the Chromecast on the little the little option you have there on the icon's actually in that toolbar next to your profile picture, tool away.
Yeah, I can't make this thing go away. There we go.
You see the in the toolbar above that. Just stop it and start it again.
That road did get rid of some.
Yeah, you got a little extra.
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Okay, so now I want to talk about Max Tegmark, who said, quote, "I don't think of AGI as a technology, but as a new species."
Yeah.
And this is what I've been dying to talk about. A lot of this. That's a better way of looking at this. It's not like us. It wouldn't be like us. It would be something different.
Terrifying. I just keep saying terrifying.
It's like the concept of aliens.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I have you read Max Tegmark's Life 3.0 book?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, he talks about Life 1.0, like microorganisms and kind of things like that. And then he talks about Life 2.0 is like humans. So basically, his view is that we have the ability to alter our software, which is by learning and training our brains. And so that's, but our hardware, our bodies are fixed. But in Life 3.0, you have organisms that can not only change their software, but can also change their hardware. And so they're even more powerful than Life 2.0, which are humans.
Yep.
That'd be kind of like the marrying of technology and biology in some way.
Or just robotics and software, right?
Well, in biology, I think of organisms and cells, and it doesn't have to be any of that. It kind of goes back to that Sam Harris notion that it's what did he call it? He called it separate from. He had a term for it. Substrate independence.
It's independent of the biology or the hardware that it's on.
Yeah, it doesn't need to have synapses and brain cells and all that stuff, blood flowing. Doesn't have that. Not necessary.
And you can argue that different people have different hardware, and in the sense that like everyone's born with a different body, right? And so it's like some people have certain conditions, either defects or advantages physically.
Yeah.
Hardware necessary for intelligence. It's very interesting.
Well, that's when you start imagining the containment problem pretty well. Right? Is the idea of like, okay, you don't necessarily need any kind of substrate to have intelligence. You don't need to exist on any given substrate to proliferate very quickly, right? It's all software, and it can move it. You can move yourself between different substrates, right? And that means you could show up in different forms, right? You become a super intelligence, right? You could start creating different ways of you know, holding your intelligence, right? Which is what we've done basically. We're doing
I remember very
today.
clear. I remember back my very first Windows 3.1 machine. The one of the boards had some issue, one of the motherboards. And I remember taking that board out and putting a new one in with the old hard drive. And it came up and it looked just like my old machine. And I thought, wow, it's a completely different machine. It's a completely different processor. It's like a different human being, but it looks just like the old one. And I'm going, oh, it's our memories that really makes us who we are. It's our memory. Remember, that was the big philosophical thought I had 35 or whatever, how long ago that was in the 90s, right? Yeah.
His memory of his house.
I believe that now. Because I also believe too that all of this concern people have might be for moot. That there's a whole lot more to self-awareness and intelligence than we can ever know. That it really is a mind-body thing. Because the more we understand our bodies, and we understand it's part of our minds, and our minds are part of our body. It's a fully integrated system. And maybe what we've been able to do with artificial intelligence is just the low-hanging fruit. And the tough problems we're not going to be able to easily solve anytime soon.
That's cool.
Because we've seen this before in other things.
I would make the claim that we could recreate ourselves in machines because the proof is in the existence of another person. Which means I just think that
I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, we create humans all the time. It's called procreation.
Exactly. So, but my point is like, you know, I think you know, assuming progress in terms of technology, however fast or however safe, whatever, assuming that keeps growing, you know, however long it takes, we'll eventually just create AGI. It'll be in some kind of robotic body of some kind, and you won't be able to say that it's, you know, any different than another person you come across, in the sense that, like, in terms of how effective or capable it is, right? I think that's a possibility, right? And just knowing that is a possibility is the whole point, like all of this, right? Is like, that's why this discussion happens, right? It's just like whether or not you think it's possible. Some people might not even think it's possible, right? You have to like assume that it is. Like, I don't know, but I mean that's just a very nuanced point that I think is like years ago I had to like convince myself that it was possible, because I was like, well, why do people keep thinking this thing?
We self-police ourselves though with technology all the time. We don't allow anybody to build a nuclear bomb.
Mm-hmm.
We don't allow cloning. Mm-hmm. We could make new species by cloning. With CRISPR technology, we can invent all kinds of different technology, but you're not allowed to mess with humans.
Oh, it's like the whole gene thing when they understood that, and then the idea of designer babies and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's not that. That's not allowed.
Yeah,
we police ourselves on that, but who knows? Maybe there are some eugenic leftovers Nazis who are out there thinking about doing stuff like that.
Almost certainly are.
So some of those
somebody's doing that.
Some of those ideas of like, you know, the acceleration of like advancing technology, like some of that philosophy comes from the idea of like toppling current systems for specific goals, and some of those goals literally are so certain groups can seize power.
Oh, I know.
And that's like, that gets into like some of the origins of those ideas of people like talking back and forth, and like something called like the dark enlightenment, and it's some crazy.
That's why I'd like to get to the digital panopticon tonight, but I don't know if we got time.
We could keep going.
Is everybody's tired? Anybody need a break?
I would probably go.
Okay, let me do two more. Let me do two more sections, then we'll be done. I got two more quotes. One's David Bowie, so that won't be too bad. John McCarthy is known as the father of AI. He did this kind of work in the 50s. He said that the science and engineering of making machines that are smart, that's what he called AI, the science and engineering of making machines that are smart. And he said, quote, that AI is the last invention humanity will ever need to make.
Mhm.
So AI will either make it for you or it will use you for other things.
But I you know, I'm probably the things that I love the most about that Tegmark quote is this idea that it's a whole new species, and reminds me of one of my favorite songs from David Bowie. No, pretty things, and it goes, "Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your mamas and papas insane? Let me make it plain. You gotta make way for the homo superior." Know that song? It's awesome. It is awesome because it's about us being replaced. The next thing. So the next stuff I want to talk about was the good stuff that AI could do, and then the bad stuff, and go into the digital panopticon, which is the first version of AI that we've seen that's really made a difference, is marketing software. And there's been a lot of bad come from that. But let's talk about the good stuff. The good stuff is this. If there's a bottleneck, or if we can't easily scale something up, AI is a perfect solution for that. And a classic case is like healthcare. There's only so many doctors. You only got so many hours in the day, and people get sick 24/7 all the time. With AI, you could like put a camera on something, and they can look at you and they could say, "Oh yeah, that's a pimple. That's not cancer."
Yeah, and there's already software that does that for any number of types of scanning.
I mean, with the right kinds of sensors, who knows, all kinds of, could probably look inside of you, do all kinds of things, take your temperature. There's lots of things it can figure out. And you wouldn't need another human being. AI could help speed that up for maybe a doctor and give it a report of all kinds. That's a possibility. Education, which I used to do a lot. I used to sell in the education space. You could come up with custom lesson plans for every student. Because every student has different learning needs. We're all special ed to a certain degree, with strengths and ability in some topics and weaknesses in others. It could do that.
I saw a webinar from Khan Academy, or a Zoom call. He was answering questions.
The Sal Khan link I saw. Yeah.
And they're making a point of saying, like, well, with some of these large language model things that they can do, like one-to-one teaching is now like a possibility, or right, like the idea that there's a tutor, right, to help students learn things, because otherwise, like, it's not very accessible. Like that idea that you could have something to teach the kid and guide it, right, as a tutor, like over time, but still also be working alongside the teacher, right? Like that's now a thing.
Another thing could be traffic predictions. Picture the possibility you had a traffic officer at every single corner guiding the traffic. Not timed lights, but actually looking at the cars coming in and knowing, I should let more of these come here and stop a few of these here. That would not be hard to do. Like what? Yeah. It'd be like everywhere, but they actually be doing something other than trying to give you a ticket.
Yeah. I'm sure it'd be worked out, but sometimes, like we have a camera at my neighborhood entrance, and it'll let orchards keep going, and it'll wait for a car to show up at the intersection, right? It doesn't see my car. sometimes. It's silver and in certain light.
It blends in.
And it won't change.
I've had trouble with that on a motorcycle too, where it's looking at the sensor and the thing.
On my bicycles, I've had that.
You sit there,
You have to get off the bike and you have to lay the bike on it. And then it'll trigger.
So I'm sure that'll get ironed out.
Actually, the state of Illinois passed a law that said that you can ride through.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What about cars like mine? Like where I'm like.
It was for bicycles. The law was for bicycles.
There needs to be for cars too that are silver that don't get seen.
You're gonna miss the digital panopticon? You can ask me about the digital panopticon. You're in it. You're in it.
Okay.
And you don't even know it.
What?
It just sounds like a new transformer. I'm excited.
You know what a panopticon is?
No, it sounds like a really awesome.
It's a prison.
Oh, not an awesome transformer.
It was a prism that was designed in the 16th, 17th century by Burt Bentham. And the idea was, instead of having all these guards watching the soldiers, and prisoners were dying in these prisons terribly. They said, what if we put it in a circle and had a few guard towers where the prisoners can't really see who the guards are? They'll self-police themselves. And the amount of staffing that you would need plummeted. And it was so successful that they started designing all prisons that way. In fact, it was so successful, they started designing offices that way, in schools that way, where the people self-police themselves because they don't really know if someone's looking at them or not.
Prison is a lawless land. I mean, people get murdered. That's active prisons.
Yes.
There's just a different way of life.
But picture the possibility that it has now become part of our life. All the time. We have cameras everywhere that's constantly looking at us. And we're constantly self-policing ourselves in ways we never did before. Because right now, there's one on this. And I don't know how long you keep, how long do you keep copies of what's on there?
That's a 3-day thing. I think.
Yeah, but if somebody's doing something that invokes a strong enough reaction from other people, this camera goes on, right?
Absolutely. Right. That's how that George Floyd murder became worldwide famous, because a bunch of people pulled their phones out. Yeah. What's interesting about the digital panopticon is that the software that's been written, especially marketing software, especially social media software, is designed to keep people checked, but not by some outsider checking on them, like Nazi propaganda or Stalinistic propaganda, Chinese. But it's people are almost self-policing themselves by staying within an app, because the makers of the apps are giving them enough information that they find interesting because they've studied the person and what their tastes are. So you're getting these dopamine hits.
And those systems have been using AI models for years. Right.
And we know for fact these social media apps are debilitating for humans.
Mm-hmm.
They're awful for humans. This is why people are and people know there's something wrong with them, but they don't know how to get out of it. They know I'm not healthy being in front of my phone all the time, but I don't know how to stop. It's like an addiction.
Last night, I went to a comedy club and I accidentally left my phone in the bathroom. And I left and I went all the way home and I discovered I did not have my phone. And I went back to the comedy club and it was locked. So I had no phone. I didn't know anybody's phone numbers. I had no way to wake up the next day without an alarm. I was going out of my mind that night, trying to figure out how am I going to function the next day. So I did not get my phone back until 2:45 today. This morning was the most peaceful day I've remembered in a really long time. Like when I went for a walk without my phone, felt it. Like kind of irritating this morning, but it got better.
Interesting.
We are completely.
You realize how much you rely on if you don't have it.
And it's maddening when you don't have it, and you're like,
Yeah, when you don't have the guard.
like I was like stir crazy, like physically, like what am I gonna do? Like, you know,
I like when I forget mine.
this is, I don't know, this is even further than that.
This is not AGI. This is narrow AI
I know,
creating this.
right? And so, like, you know, you were talking about Elon Musk and the other person, how like they think this is all a good dinner, like way to go, and maybe we should leave it up to the masses to decide. I don't think the masses could even make a good decision.
That's exactly right.
Like we're already, if everybody could put like their devices down for a week and then we all have a collective conversation.
And what people will say is, I feel much safer with this. If I get stuck someplace,
Yeah.
I can call my wife, I can get help, I can take, I'm safer with this. But no, this is the kind of thing that creates insurrections on the US Capitol.
And then to
And
another,
that's not safe.
to another point of problems that are societal, you know, you've got like, okay, the NSA that had been known to store information that it had just recorded over time passively. It had, that organization didn't have a way to sift through that data. It just accumulated. It had a bunch, like they had a bunch of information that they stored passively, but nothing was going through it in any intelligent way. But now we've got a large language model that it could start, like you could start doing that stuff, and you don't have to spend man hours, it's machine hours, or just pay for a higher amount that you rent your AWS bill or whatever, right? And that's the stuff where you start getting into like the bad, right? Where it's like, well, now if you've got governments who start using this in that way, and that's why, you know, where it starts getting a little bit more serious. But my opinion right now as to where the US government understands this stuff is we're super behind, because, you know, I went to, I think it was AI.gov, where they were like, yeah, we're trying to hire people for this stuff. And I'm like looking at the roles they're hiring for. I'm like, they're paying nothing compared to what any like San Francisco company would pay. Like, and there's no jobs listed on there compared to what you would find anywhere else for any other thing.
There's a concern.
There's sort of two truths. I think you just said. One, the government's always been behind on technology.
Yes.
And two, they always underpay what the commercial sector.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, so I'm not as concerned about what I just described as much.
This is why China thinks they're one up on us, because democracy is very, very slow, and it may not be able to make changes fast enough. They can make decisions like that. I don't know if they're good ones, but they can make decisions like that.
So to a certain extent,
but I mean, the downside to that is that the innovation is kind of crushed because people are afraid.
Like all these technologies are coming from American companies.
Yes.
You know, so this like the government side different than the society, like civilization side, where like the freedom that we're afforded in this society just for some reason create more companies that
they're using AI, especially face scanning software, to build to check everybody and to have everybody build a social score. And that social score will tell you whether or not what you can do and not do. And people have to decide whether they live with you or not. And the social score is shared with everybody. So you really don't have any privacy. They're using this technology like George Orwell's 1984, which I just read this summer. I've never read it before. A frightening book. But what's interesting about Orwell's 1984, Big Brother was kind of running everybody's lives. What's going on here is we're kind of imprisoning ourselves. with our own stuff, with
our technology.
right. And I'm just as guilty of this. I watch my little geo tracker car. I start watching YouTube video on it. Next thing I'm watching another YouTube video on it, another YouTube video on it.
We're going towards the Wall-E society, right? Where we're all floating, watching. We're all on another planet.
Wall-E.
Yeah, like while Wall-E's left here to do all the work to clean up the planet. Right? We don't want to do it.
Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. I got just one more thing to kind of wrap this up. This is actually a quote from Guy de Beard, who was a philosopher in the 60s. He came up with this idea of the spectacle. And I think it does a good job of kind of explaining where we're at today. He said, quote, "The more he identifies with the dominant images of need, the less he understands his own life and his own desires. The spectacle's estrangement from the acting subject is expressed by the fact that the individual's gestures are no longer his own. They are gestures of someone else who represents them to him." So what he's saying is that there's so much, even in the 60s, we saw this, there was so much on television, there's so much crap, there's so much stuff going on that people are no longer living their lives. They're living it watching TV. They're living it watching movies. They're living it through celebrities. They're living it through famous people. They're not living their lives. They're living through these other people's lives. And that's only gotten worse.
Yeah.
It's only gotten worse.
Well, to your point on the YouTube thing, I'm like that too. It's like once I started, you can't stop.
And they know what you want to watch.
Yeah.
They know exactly your favorite shit.
Like I remember thinking about, where intelligence comes from a while ago, where like the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes is like potentially something that differentiates us from some other animals. Right? Yeah, the fact that I could imagine what it's like to from someone else's perspective as they're going through it, and just like think of that is something that animals may not be doing. And this might be one of these weird consequences of consciousness, right? The ability that we can get stuck doing that over and over again that's what we're all about, right?
But you bring up a point that I think that we need to step aside, is that we here today, us folks here, we are conscious, we're cognizant of this in a way that most people aren't. We're having a conversation about this and most people aren't. Most people don't know what's happening to them.
No.
So we can make decisions on how we want to live our lives, how we want to see that. And that's our duty, is to keep on top of this and make sure it doesn't go off too much off the rails.
We're more aware of it than other people.
Yes.
And because there's a lot of people who aren't thinking about this stuff in any
whatsoever.
They're not thinking about it at all because they just don't know how that works, right? Like it literally stems from not understanding how it all works at all. Yeah, it's a smartphone, right?
Right.
This is AI to some people, right? Like, but
right.
But it's also the same problem of it's also like
it's also artificial stupidity too.
Yeah.
Well, it's making people more and more stupid.
Yeah.
Because it's always focusing on the past. These LLMs at least are. It's not about creating something new. I think we're actually done, Amanda.
Oh, well, I gotta get these guys from the bed.
Thanks for making it. Thanks, guys, for being so
Sorry,
good.
I couldn't tell you. I lost my phone. I couldn't RSVP today. I couldn't do anything. I'm lucky that they allowed me to go pick it up today.
I thought you texted me this morning. It was from yesterday.
Yesterday I texted you, and then I lost it. I went and decorated that tree, and then probably lost my phone.
Oh, that's what's from now. I maybe because I just saw it this morning. Maybe I was just assumed it was.
Yesterday.
So, but it's an interesting thing. You said that you felt a sense of peace this morning.
So much
Is
peaceful.
it-
I walk, I had more spring.
Is it at the point? This is the real that
Yes,
you'll
yes.
do this from now on more often.
I thought about it deeply. Like, I would really like to, because I just don't want to miss like calls from my parents, like I just got now, right? I don't want to miss that stuff. I want to make sure that I'm always like available for certain people, right? But how do you? I guess there's a way to screen.
Well, coloring.
You did it the way I grew up with.
No matter how
the
much
phones.
I'm like, I will only pick this up if it's important. I still go only. And I think of something that I cannot tell you. I think of 1,000 things and I look them up just because I'm
But
curious.
you don't need to talk to them.
But
The
my
phones
parents,
used to be on the wall. Used to be in a room. You'd go places that were. We used to live without phones everywhere. If they really need somebody important, they can call 911.
well, they're old.
Yep.
And I know,
Old people know how to dial 911. I'm an old person. I know how to dial.
you know, like, yeah. But or my kids, you know, my parents, my kids.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing we all need to be cognizant of is like we've taught ourselves that we have to have this, but
To be available, yeah.
Yeah,
But it was
I mean, like,
so last night I was like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna be awake for another hour and a half and I can't fix anything. I guess I'll read a book. And like I read a book and then I went to sleep and I woke up. I didn't know how to wake up because like I did dig up an old talk radio. Doesn't really work anymore. So I had to set my watch. Didn't know how to do that. Took a while, figured it out. But like just people at the comedy club, I had to put in my video camera onto my computer. I hadn't done that. I got the computer a year ago, never put that back on. Had to do that and use Google Voice to call them, to find out their email, to also email them and leave a Google Voice. And it's like I cannot contact my children except through email. And I have 2 sons that don't